I'm Maurice Coleman. Welcome to the Information Gone Wild podcast, brought to you by the San Jose State University iSchool. I'm one of your hosts.
I'm Paul Signorelli. I'm your other host for this particular episode. On this podcast, we discuss all things library and information science.
And today we are so fortunate to have as our guest Michael Lambert. Michael is the city librarian for the San Francisco Public Library System and president of the Public Library Association, among other things.
Michael, couldn't be happier than to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Michael, let's start with you talking about your background in libraries, what first inspired you to seek a career in libraries, and then I want to pitch you a softball question we like to ask our guests. What brings you happiness?
Sounds good. Well, my origin story begins in Seoul, Korea. I was born there, but I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, plumb over yonder. I attended the real USC, the University of South Carolina,
Oh,
and
shots fired. Shots
home of the
fired.
Fighting Gamecocks. And
Ooh.
I randomly found librarianship. I was not a huge reader growing up, but I did read a lot of comic books and I had them meticulously organized. And I love to merchandise my comic books in my bedroom. So that was the earliest clue. But my first semester at USC, I needed a job and I'm dating myself. This was 1992, pre-internet. And so back in those days, you would go to the job help center on campus and they had bulletin boards and they had binders and like newspaper clippings. And I was just scouring the opportunities and found public library, part-time, periodicals aid, $4.34 an hour, 20 hours a week, nights and weekends, worked perfectly with my academic schedule. And I started in the old main library in Columbia, South Carolina. It was kind of like a bunker. It's built in the 50s, too small from day one. And I was only there for about 3 months, and we moved in this glorious new main library. It opened on Valentine's Day, 1993. It was a very romantic way to begin my career journey. And this main library, it was built to help revitalize downtown, and that's what it did.
Mhm.
So I spent the first 7.5 years there climbing the paraprofessional ranks. I had I still didn't know I wanted to be a librarian. I worked there throughout college. I was a business major, then I changed to history, thought I was going to be a school teacher. And when I graduated from college, I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I was
Uh-huh.
doing full-time maintenance work at the public library, literally changing light bulbs, plunging toilets,
Wow.
schlepping furniture, driving a van around, delivering books to all the branches. And this children's librarian, she saw something in me, Leslie Barbin, she's still there. And she said, "Hey, kid, you need to come work for me." And she taught me the art of storytelling. She taught me how to do story times and puppet shows. And that's when the light bulb went off. I developed a passion for this work. She encouraged me to go to library school. She helped me get a scholarship. So, you know, it's important if you can benefit from having a mentor, really take advantage of that. I mean, I'm sure we'll get more into my
Wow.
career journey later, but what brings me happiness? I think from a work perspective, getting stuff done, having fulfilling work, checking things off my to-do list gives me a sense of accomplishment. And, increasingly as I get older, I enjoy seeing other people grow and develop and thrive in their careers. And on a personal level, I'm the father of a son, and just seeing him grow up and live his best life brings me great pride and joy and happiness.
Michael, you've already dived into a theme which is near and dear to my heart. I know it's run through San Francisco Public for at least a couple of city librarians, and that's the whole idea of leadership and mentoring. Could you talk a little bit about what San Francisco Public was doing when you got there and what it's continuing to do in terms of leadership development? with your staff as well as the tie-ins you do with the city and county of San Francisco?
Sure. Well, I had the great benefit of being hired by Luis Herrera. I call him the GOAT. You know, he was like the Michael Jordan of librarians, transformational, iconic leader. And just being able to shadow him for 4 years, it was akin to getting an Ivy League education and how to be a library administrator. You know, one of Luis's strengths was fostering a great organizational culture, and we have a strong leadership team. But you know, San Francisco, we grow a lot of our leaders from within. I mean, we build a strong bench. Um, I'd say the majority of the time, we promote from within. Not entirely. I mean, we do bring in new blood from the outside. Um, but I think that that's really what I would say differentiates this organization. And I've worked for, you know, 4 urban libraries in my 32-year career. And I would say it's the culture that I inherited. And, you know, I've tried to continue to improve what we have and you know, continue Luis's strong legacy here.
Please don't let him ever know that, well, this is just between you and me. Don't let him know I said nice things about him. But I was struck when he was first hired and I was running the training program by his insistence that he not have a special orientation, but he get the same orientation staff had. And he sat through it, accumulated what he could in the 3 hours we had together that day. And he asked a couple of questions that when we worked together after the session led to massive changes in how we approach things. I love that. How do you interact with your staff, with your training department and others to carry on that thing that you and I both obviously so admire in Luis?
Well, we are increasingly prioritizing employee engagement. So that runs the gamut from staff development and training to co-creating. We just did a massive strategic planning process, which netted a bold new vision for the library, Vision 2030. But, you know, that entailed, you know, probably 15 internal listening tour sessions with every segment of our workforce, some targeted, some open to all staff. We had a select group of staff ambassadors that got a deeper level of engagement working with our consultant team. But, you know, staff recognition, celebrating wins every opportunity you can, recognizing excellence and celebrating employee milestones, their service milestones. We have employees sometimes that work here for over 40 years, which is phenomenal. And then, you know, having, you know, a holiday party, just really trying to run the full gamut of employee engagement and, you know, investing in our workforce.
Can you tell us a little bit about San Francisco Public? San Francisco is about 49 square miles, but you have a pretty diverse way for people to get the people of San Francisco to get in contact with you through main library, different branches, bookmobiles, and kiosk. Can you give us a bit of a picture of San Francisco Public, its collections, and the variety of services that you provide to the citizens of San Francisco?
Well, I'm just going to brag about San Francisco Public
That's
Library
that's what
for
we'd
two
like you to do,
minutes.
Michael. That's why you're here.
We are the best public library in America. All of you listening can tell your family and friends I said that. Um, we are the most well-supported urban library in the country. The residents here have agreed to tax themselves just for library services. So we just got a 25-year renewal. Yes, I said 25 years. The richest ballot measure in the history of library ballot measures. Total value $6 to $12 billion through 2048, depending on how rich the economy is during that time horizon. So I'm very proud of that. You know, that allows us to deliver a high level of service. We're the only major city in the state of California that has all of our library locations open 7 days a week. Our tagline is every library, every day. And, you know, we have 28 library locations. That's in, what you said, 7 by 7 square miles. That's the third most libraries per square mile of any city in the country outside of New York City and Queens and the Bronx or Brooklyn. So we're like the top four, and we have the largest book budget per capita, very well staffed. Just really an embarrassment of riches to serve our community. And it's an honor and a privilege to work in this city. We try to give back to the profession. Certainly, I'm fighting the good fight right now, trying to lean on our local assemblyman and senator in the California legislature to increase funding for public libraries at the state level. I mean, the level of funding provided by the state for libraries is pitiful, and it's not even budget dust. But I like to point to the example of San Francisco and the return on the investment that we deliver, the high level of value. We are the highest rated department of city government, and stewardship is very important to me and my team. We show up every day to deliver for the residents of San Francisco.
I know from being around you, seeing your Facebook account, coming through the library all the time, you're out there on the desk occasionally to get the pulse of what it's like to be out there. Can you tell us a story about something you've heard from a library user that tells you you're right on track?
Yeah. We are data driven here. We created a unit in 2017 called Research Strategy and Analytics. So we created a position on the executive leadership team, the chief analytics officer, and that's something I encourage all of you listening to take data analytics coursework while you're in grad school, because it's so important. So what we're able to do with this unit is center our community and achieve customer focus. We measure on a monthly basis the level of satisfaction our residents have with our library programs and services, every facet of what we do, whether it's physical collections, digital, safety and security, cleanliness of our facilities, the level of assistance our staff provide. We want to stay in tune with what the needs and the wants are, whether it's programming or hours of operation. So I just reported out to our library commission last week. If anybody's interested in geeking out, you can watch the YouTube or go on our website, sfpl.org, and look up that PowerPoint presentation. But we are constantly monitoring our level of performance, and embedded in that presentation, there's some nice anecdotes from members of the public.
Yeah, would you follow that up with one of those anecdotes?
Well, I mean, the one that always resonates with me is the library saved my life. Whether it is finding a book that is affirming to somebody, or having a staff member that was caring at a moment where somebody needed attention. I never get tired of hearing that. And I'm pleased to say that I hear that, every year throughout the year at different moments. When I talk to people about the impact of public libraries, inevitably somebody will say, the public library saved my life.
So you've had a lot of experience throughout the library. Heck, you started like many people who didn't know they wanted to do this as a profession. If you could take your experience and create an entirely new job description for public library directors based on how you blend a large number of personal and professional experiences that you've had, what might that description say?
Well, on a boring note, but hopefully still inspirational, I would say inherently, I like to think of us as public servants, because it's not library service, it's public service. And, what is a public library in 2025 and beyond? We're a collection of staff, facilities, collections, technology, and budgets. So we have organizational assets that we align with the most pressing needs in our community. On a more exciting note, I would say we're inventing the future here in San Francisco and inventing the roles that you're alluding to. So our new strategic plan, the vision is a democratic, equitable, and vibrant San Francisco for everyone, where our staff, where our library is helping people to live their best lives and attain their goals for a brighter future. Our mission is to connect our diverse community to learning, opportunities, and each other. So I just told you the vision and the mission. I didn't
Yep.
say reading and I didn't say book one time. And our new strategic priorities are for us to be a champion for literacy and a resource provider, which we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's where you're going to see the traditional roles of public libraries. But more forward-looking opportunities are for us to be a cultural amplifier, to celebrate the culture, the diversity, the heritage, the history of our diverse communities. We also want to be a community catalyzer and foster shared experiences for a more connected community. And finally, we aspire to be a thoughtful navigator to guide and connect our residents with the library services or other city services that they need in order to be successful.
You really, in taking the first part of that question that Maurice and I were popping to you there, are starting to describe something that really impresses me about my own library, the main library here in San Francisco. I go in, I use it for all the traditional reasons, but I'm also just floored by the number of opportunities to engage with others. And one that strikes out to me, I'm a bad San Franciscan and have not attended it yet, but Night of Ideas, which was just held again. Could you describe to us overall the Night of Ideas idea and how San Francisco got involved in it?
So the origin of Night of Ideas is from France. This is the French's idea. It's their version of cultural diplomacy. It's been a smashing success. C'est très magnifique. And it was first brought to us in 2018. The consul general in France, the staff, they said, hey, we have this thing we do every year across the globe called the Night of Ideas, and we'd like to invite you to partner and participate. So we said yes. The inaugural Night of Ideas for us was February 2nd, 2019. It's a night of art, culture, debate, philosophy, performances. It's phenomenal. I mean, we had over 5,000 people activating every square inch of our main library on a Saturday night. And what's funny is it was raining that night. There was a concert across the street at the Bill Graham Auditorium, and we had a line that snaked around our building and down the block. It took, you know, nearly 2 hours for it to dissipate. And all these young people at the concert, they kept looking over at the library, confused, like, are we at the right thing? And I mean, we are annually the hottest ticket in town on that one night a year. And we've continued to build upon what we're doing and make it better. So you missed a good one, Paul. This past April 5th, we had 12,000 people show up. And we activated not only our main library, but also the old main library, which is now the Asian Art Museum, and the space in between, which we call Fulton Plaza now. So we had a light show out there, food trucks. We had Burning Man posted up, setting up some of their cool vehicles and exhibits. So mark your calendars, folks. Anybody in the Bay Area or even outside of the Bay Area, if you want to come to San Francisco for one weekend, it's generally, in that February to April time horizon. They change the date every year, but it'll blow your mind. It's unlike any library experience you've ever had.
And the tickets are very expensive, right?
Yes, it's free.
Thank you.
You talked
So,
about 12,000 people coming. Check my memory if you can. I was in the main library when on the first day that it opened. And my memory is we had 10,000 people that day and we're blown away. You're out doing opening day in the main library, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. You also are making the point that libraries now are far more than what most people assume they are. They're cultural centers where community members from all over the place come together and see things. You walk through that night of ideas. Can you remember something that made you extremely happy by what you saw that night?
One thing that I'm really proud of is the mayor of the city and county of San Francisco showed up. So we have a new mayor, Daniel Lurie, and he gets libraries and he's a patron of our branches. And, it made me very happy that he showed up and helped kick it off. That was the first time in the 5 times we've done it that we've had the mayor show up. Beyond that, I think what's really cool the past couple years, we've kicked it off at 4 p.m. with an afternoon of ideas. So we're doing something just for youth and families to have that night of ideas experience before the more adult fare kicks off at 7.
Any aspirations to make this a year-round thing and make it just a year of ideas?
Well, it is a heavy lift. I think we had over 150 staff that worked this event. And, I think from a capacity standpoint, it is prohibitive to do it more than once a year. I mean, the curation of the programming is phenomenal. The level of authors and artists and performers, it's top notch.
Michael, what's been your return on investment? It's a lot of staff time, planning, etc. What are some of the impact of your nights and afternoon of ideas on your library users? Have they been able to express to you what changes they've made, etc., because of those nights of ideas and afternoon of ideas?
I would say there's 2 ways I measure the success of this. One is just delighting people. And, embedded in our strategic plan, we have these organizational shifts, and these are internally focused aspirations. So we want to center the community. We want to have a more entrepreneurial approach, be more proactive in how we connect. We want to have a growth mindset. We want to infuse the unique spirit of San Francisco into what we do. And if you look up the French consulate people on LinkedIn and look at their post following Night of Ideas, they will tell you that San Francisco has the most successful Night of Ideas in the world of
Wow.
all the cities that do this. And, we are amplifying joy and wonder. We are sparking curiosity and delight. And we are, just making people really, really happy. And again, I hear the anecdotes, I see it on social media, and I see it in our customer satisfaction data. Now, beyond that, what brings me great joy is garnering more support for my institution. So the Monday after the Saturday Night of Ideas, the mayor's office, the chief of protocol, which is a very important position in the mayor's office. It's the person that entertains foreign delegations and schmoozes with high-end donors. Her team brought lovely croissant over for my team to enjoy with a handwritten note of thanks for what we're doing for the city and county of San Francisco. So we're on to something.
Let's talk about what you bring to Civic Center through things like Night of Ideas and just the work that all of you do every day. gets a bad rap from a lot of people who don't know San Francisco. How do you feel about the neighborhood? What do you see there, and what makes you happy to be down in Civic Center?
Well, I've been here 11 years now, so I've seen the ups and downs, and there's been a lot that's happened in the state of California, a lot that's happened in the world over that 11-year time horizon. Um, in my time here, I've witnessed heroin being decriminalized from being a felony to, you know, barely a misdemeanor. I mean, the police at one point wouldn't even bother writing a citation. And, I've seen people shooting up openly on our property. I've seen the opioid crisis play out. That wreaked havoc on our public library. I mean, every public policy issue in society plays out in some form or fashion within the four walls of the public library because we are the most democratic of institutions.
That's the small d democratic, not necessarily the big D. It's a small d
Right.
democratic. That means everybody gets involved.
Exactly. With the pandemic, we had to shut down our library system, and I had a safe sleeping village next to the library. They basically closed a street, fenced it in, and plunked down over 100 tents for people to live for nearly 2 years. So the Tenderloin has historically been a tough neighborhood, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's gotten a lot better. I mean, if you haven't been to San Francisco recently, the city is making a roaring comeback. The neighborhoods are vibrant. The restaurants, the nightlife is popping. The public library is thriving. But I'm proud of what we are doing as a public library to activate Civic Center, both inside and outside. We have live music that I pay for, the library pays for, outside of our building every Tuesday, actually twice a week. And then we have a farmer's market out there a couple days a week. We have different exhibits from time to time, but it's this pro-social positive activation of our space that is contributing to the vibrancy of our neighborhood and the comeback, because you can't just law enforce your way out of every problem.
And speaking of not law enforcement way out of every problem, last year you worked with San Francisco City County Supervisor Matt Dorsey to create a program to distribute addiction recovery books at all of your public libraries. Can you tell us a little bit how the collaboration started and what results it's producing for the library and, more importantly, for the people of San Francisco?
This was the epitome of bottom up innovation and co-creating with staff. So I had a librarian that worked here at the main library on the fourth floor in the Business Science and Technology Center. And she was, I think, also volunteering in her free time, working for this supervisor, aspiring supervisor at the time, um, and just connected with him. He ultimately won. And Supervisor Matt Dorsey, his personal story is that he suffered through addiction, and now he's basically made it his mission in life to help people in recovery and save people's lives, keep families together. And he had this big recovery initiative, and Doreen saw what he was doing with other departments, and she said, "Why didn't you ask us? you know
Mhm.
why didn't you invite the public library to support this initiative?" And she opened his eyes to the transformational power of public libraries. And she invited him to support this idea that she had of getting all the literature in all of our locations. And not, I mean, we had it, we used to check it out, and it was part of our collection, but often those books disappeared and then we're
Right.
replacing them, limited quantities. But now we just buy a ton of these books in multiple languages in all the different, I guess, schools of thought, whether it's AA, NA. I don't have all the nomenclature, but the point is it's free. You don't have to have a library card. You can come in without shame or judgment anonymously, get what you need, whether it's for you or your family or loved ones, and you can take it and you can mark it up. You can share it. And it's going very well. I mean, we've distributed thousands of pieces of this literature since we kicked this off. I want to say in like October of 2023. Can't remember exactly when we kicked it off, but it's been a smashing success. It's already been emulated by some other libraries around the country.
One of the
Can you
striking
tell
things to
us?
me as a library user is walking in. And of course, there's that beautiful atrium you see in the main library. And then off to one side, you see the new book area, which many of us head off to. But I love the idea that in starting what you're talking about here, there's not a big flash saying, hey, everybody, look what we're doing. It was just integrated as a normal part of things. And I noticed as I was walking over to pick up my reserves that collection is right there near the pickup to the reserves. You're talking about the importance in your role and your colleagues' roles in making collections like that visible, but not calling attention to them that might attract criticism.
Yeah, I mean, we are San Francisco Public Library has long prided itself on being inclusive and having that human touch. And we have a strong commitment to equity, accessibility, social justice, and I think this program is just another manifestation of trying to leverage our resources for the greatest and highest good, you know, having a great impact to save people's lives.
So, what are some other programs that you've been able to do that have impacted the people in San Francisco, like the kiosk program?
Being a well-funded library system, we have 11 supervisorial districts, and that means there's 11 district supervisors, elected officials, and everybody's got two or three branch libraries minimally in their district, but there's never enough. People always want more. There are neighborhoods that don't have a branch library. And, part of our challenge as library professionals is focusing on sustainability,
Of course.
and we have finite resources. So we have to be imaginative and, you know, resourceful. I mean, we just can't keep opening neighborhood libraries on every corner. It's going to be cost prohibitive. So, we're not the first, but we have dabbled in investing in some of these automated book kiosks, which extends our reach. It provides some level of core service access to physical collections for neighborhoods that otherwise wouldn't have close proximity to a neighborhood library. We have two of them embedded in different neighborhoods, different public housing sites. We have one on Treasure Island, which is a notable community in the San Francisco Bay that doesn't have a branch library currently. And then we have one in this hip neighborhood called Dog Patch, which is close to the Chase Center. It's, a lot of relatively affluent people. They wanted a library, but I've had to say no to some people. Like we just
Sure.
can't put a new branch in your neighborhood, or maybe down the road, but you're not first in line. And so it's a way to effectively use technology to provide service.
So, do you partner with businesses and communities like the place that begins with an A, like their drop boxes for accessibility purposes? Has it helped, and how have you been able to leverage some of that into successful partnerships in other ways?
Yeah. I mean, like having a kiosk on Treasure Island, we've embedded that in the Island Cove market. I mean, it's a food desert, but the small little grocery store is kind of the hub for this part of Treasure Island, and it made sense to put the book kiosk there. We have bookmobile service also regularly on Treasure Island. I would say, you know, we have different affinity centers, whether it's a Filipino center, a Chinese center, an African American center, the Hormel LGBTQIA plus center. We have a Talking Books and Braille center, a Deaf Services center. So one thing that I'm really proud of about San Francisco Public Library is that we really strive to have a diverse workforce that is representative of our community and have bilingual staff, collections, programs, services, archives that are dedicated to, the various segments of our population so that they can be served by their public library in an appropriate, culturally affirming way that's going to meet their needs.
Michael, we're having the conversation in April 2025. Executive orders are out there saying, thou shalt not say this, thou shalt not say that. Diversity, equity, inclusion is under massive attack because of executive orders. How do you and your peers deal with that? And what would you suggest to our students to prepare for that kind of world if this continues?
I think our industry, well, public libraries, even, I'd say the American Library Association, um, I think, there's been controversy in recent years and libraries have suffered as a result of that. My leadership style is more pragmatic. So, I know when I show up as the CEO, as the city librarian, my number one job at the end of the day is to garner support for my institution. That is my job number one because I have 900 employees depending on me to provide them with, their jobs. And, if that means I don't get to be my authentic self in every moment of every day, I'm okay with that. And, our colleagues in many states out there, they don't get to be their authentic selves all the time, but I think many of them are pragmatic and they understand, whether you want to call it code switching or, um, I think we just have to be realistic that, we're standing on the shoulders of giants that have fought for civil rights for, since the beginning, arguably, but we have to be smart. And, even in San Francisco, liberal, progressive San Francisco, we're being careful right now because we understand as a sanctuary city, we have a target on our back and we rely on, federal funding and billions of dollars of federal funding, whether it's for public transportation, public health. So I know there's a lot of young people in the graduate school program, and I admire you. I respect you. I have a 21-year-old son myself. Um, but, fight the good fight, but, there's a proper way to do it so that we can still garner support for our institutions.
Like so many other people, I see just hateful things on social media these days. Are you and your staff getting a lot of hate mail? And if so, how are you dealing with that?
No, I mean, we are a beloved institution. 82.58% of the residents agreed to tax themselves just for library services. I'm not going to say it's all roses here, but, being in a dense urban environment and just being a public servant, you're not going to make all the people happy all the time. And so you have to accept that. I mean, we strive to deliver service excellence and make people happy. And sometimes we fall short, whether it's an unforced error or just because it's mission impossible. But, um, I think we should all try to deliver for our patrons. And, they're all coming in with some unmet need. And, um, you know, sometimes it's a performance, sometimes it's an information assistant, sometimes it's just finding the book they want to read. But we just have to show up and do our best every day.
Michael, there's a lot of nuance to what you said, including understanding your political situation of where you are and how to really humble yourself. That's really, you're being a servant leader and humbling yourself to better serve your, in your case, 900 staff. Can you tell some of our San Jose State students some skills they should seek out and develop in order to both lead a large urban library system and balance that with larger responsibilities, such as serving as president of PLA?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say keep doing what you're doing. I mean, by virtue of the fact you're enrolled at San Jose State University, a fine institution, great program. I hire lots of San Jose State Spartans all the time. But don't stop after you graduate. Keep learning, keep growing, keep consuming content that's going to make you better. So when I was coming out of grad school, I was ambitious. I knew I wanted to be a library administrator. And so, I worked my way up the ladder, assistant branch manager, senior manager. But I was always reading and reading management books, leadership books, self-help books. Um, you have to know thyself, develop emotional intelligence. Um, seek out inspiration from outside of our industry. I read a lot of customer service books. I read like Inc. magazine or Harvard Business Review. Um, try to broaden your horizons that are going to give you new ideas and bolster your fundamental skill set and competencies as a library professional.
Michael, like a lot of libraries, well, like many library students who have say, I'm going to be a librarian as soon as they get out of school. You didn't. You did all these other things. You were a business major. You had all these other experiences. You got your hands dirty at the library. What are some things besides traditional management books that you would encourage all library students to do, especially if they want to get into follow into management like you?
Well, I think first and foremost, get some experience. Try to get a library page position. If you want to work in a academic library or a public library, I mean, you got to get your foot in the door and you got to start somewhere. I mean, I started at the bottom and basically never stopped. And um, if you can't get that paid experience, volunteer. But you gotta get some experience and start building your network. And, you know, um, it's critically important to get some experience so that you can apply the theory and the values and the theoretical underpinnings that you're getting in graduate school. Um, that would be my recommendation.
I love hearing you talk about the role that the volunteers play because, I ran the volunteer program there for many years, and I loved seeing the people who'd come in wanting to be in the library, wanting to work there, but hadn't the foggiest idea how to start. And it was always fun to see some of the volunteers work their way into positions over the years. What do you and your colleagues at San Francisco Public do these days to encourage volunteers to look at careers there?
Well, Paul, it's complicated in San Francisco. This is a big labor town, and I think volunteer roles can sometimes be radioactive to organized labor. SEIU 1021 is the 800-pound heavyweight that I deal with all the time, representing 85% of my workforce. So they're very guarded and protective about their bargaining unit's work. But that being said, a fun anecdote, when I started here in 2014 as the deputy city librarian, I reconnected with a librarian. Her name's Lori Chan, and she's a manager in our Business Science and Technology Center. But Lori was a volunteer for me in 2005 at the Foster City Library on the peninsula. And, that's what I'm talking about. She had an interest in working in libraries. She cut her teeth as a volunteer and obviously took the steps to get where she's at. As far as volunteer opportunities in San Francisco, we have to be creative. So we can't ask people to shelve books, but the way I think about it is, how can a volunteer enhance the level of service that we provide and maybe do a role that otherwise would not be done by one of our library workers? So we have a very successful tutoring program for struggling readers in elementary school called FOG Readers. So one-to-one tutoring that gives people exposure to the importance of libraries and helping address early literacy and getting kids reading by grade level in third grade. Another example of that is Project Read, our adult literacy program. Again, a one-to-one tutoring program. We have a board of advising youth, which these are young people that donate their time to help inform library programs and services. On the adult side, we have a council of neighborhood libraries, which is made up of advocates and power users in all of our different libraries. So we try to be creative within the constraints that I have, working in a big city with a civil service system and labor unions.
You're hitting a point here that I think our students and our peers across the country could probably benefit from hearing your perspective on. When I started there as the first full-time paid person running the volunteer services program, the union made it out that I was coming in to bust the union and that we were going to replace them. And we had to remind them, all of us, that there was a contract saying thou shalt not do that. So that wasn't an issue. We went over the 15 years I was there from having the union very antagonistic to when I left saying, we're really sorry he's going because this has been great for us. What do you recommend to students at this point to prepare themselves to work successfully to build those kind of positive relations in a union environment?
It's all about relationships, and there's no shortcuts in relationship building. It takes time. You got to really invest. And we have good labor relations in San Francisco. And, I've had to demonstrate that I'm willing to make labor's priorities my priorities, and I've been able to deliver. But I also recognize labor unions, they're a special interest group. They have an agenda, and they inherently have to have issues to demonstrate their worth for people to pay dues. And so there is a tension of always more, it's never enough. And I just take it in stride. And we do invest by meeting with labor once a month, the leadership team, and try to address issues before they become bigger issues. So I think it's just an investment of your time and energy to foster those good relationships.
You talked very early on about some of the people who were your influence to become a leader in libraries. What are maybe two lessons you learned from them that you're willing to share with our students and peers?
That's an excellent question. Getting back to one of the questions you asked earlier about navigating this difficult environment, the first library director I ever worked for, his name was Charles David Warren, and he was very effective at garnering support for the Richland Library in Columbia, South Carolina, one of the best urban libraries in the country. You might not think of that intuitively, but it's true. Look at their website. Phenomenal work that they're doing in Colombia. So early on, he told me that, don't wear your politics on your sleeve, you know, be politically independent, basically don't identify myself as a Democrat. And this is coming from a guy that lived his entire life, I think, in the Southeast. He was a closeted gay man. And, he did extraordinary work. And I think part of my pragmatism I learned from what he imparted on me. I think another library director I worked for, Charles Brown, may he rest in peace. He's gone now, but he instilled this notion of service excellence, of delivering the highest possible level of service to our community that we can. Um, and that stuck with me. I think Luis also set extremely high standards and, just really conveyed that we don't have any excuses in San Francisco. We are very well supported and we have to deliver for our residents. So, what I draw away from that is the importance of stewardship of the community's resources and being a good steward of those resources. I think beyond that, I took a leadership program in the 2000s, probably 20 years ago now. And it was in San Mateo County. It was San Mateo County government. And part of it was watching these VHS tapes of the Hall of Fame college football coach, Lou Holtz. And, he boiled down the difference between successful teams and unsuccessful teams with three questions. The most successful teams can answer affirmatively to three questions. Do you care about me? Can I trust you? And are you committed to excellence? So, what you can extrapolate from that as principles are do your best, treat others the way that they would have you treat them, not the golden rule, but the platinum rule, and commit yourself to excellence. Are you committed to excellence? And so that's kind of been my approach to leadership.
Michael, what do you do as we wrap up? What do you do to take care of yourself? You are busy. You run a large system. You're president of PLA. I'm sure those are not the only two hats that you wear. What are some things that you do to take care of yourself?
I'm an old guy now, and I've learned the hard way a lot of life lessons, and you have to take care of yourself. You have to exercise. You have to be disciplined about your sleep. You have to eat right, or, eat in moderation, things that you enjoy that may not always be the best for you. It's pretty basic, but it's wasn't always easy for me to do in practice. And just learning how to be resilient, learning how to cope with adversity. I mean, I've had moments in my life where I was broken down, either professionally or personally, and, ultimately surviving that adversity made me stronger and wiser. But, I still now pay attention to all the things I just described. I get off work, I will either take a long 4 mile walk along Ocean Beach, or I'll ride my bike through Golden Gate Park, um, try to go to bed, before 10:30, 11 o'clock every night, and just have a routine. You know, you have to be crazy a little bit to do this job at this level, at this scale. But I've just learned how to keep my sanity through doing some of these basics.
Michael, thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope that our audience is as inspired as we are by what you've been saying, and that they find a way to apply the wisdom that you've been sharing with us today.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Maurice. It's been a pleasure to join all of you. And I wish all of you out there listening the very best in your career journey. If you ever want to reach out to me directly, I'm here for you, citylibrarian@sfpl.org.
And thank you all for joining us. And thanks to the SJSU iSchool. Our guests, like the wonderful, and we spent not enough time with Michael Lambert, come from traditional and non-traditional places. We continue to invite them to share insights and adventures from the field with us, along with what inspires their work.
We hope you'll join us for the next Information Gone Wild podcast, where we discuss all things information science. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is episode 12, folks. Maurice and I are standing here kind of shaking our heads saying 12 of these things already under our belts and still going strong. So please subscribe to that, share it with friends, and come back for more.